Discover the amazing moment a billionaire witnessed a waitress' incredible calm during a robbery. It was just another bustling Thursday evening at the downtown diner, a little oasis of warmth nestled amidst the towering concrete. Sarah, the 28-year-old waitress known for her unwavering smile and kinetic energy, flitted between tables. The air was thick with the scent of freshly brewed coffee and the sweet promise of homemade pies. Laughter bubbled from the regulars who made this diner their home, sharing stories like the pie slices they savored. Sarah poured coffee with a heart full of love for her community, each cup a testament to her dedication. Amidst the chatter sat Thomas, a billionaire lost in a world of luxury, his attention locked on his phone rather than the genuine camaraderie surrounding him. But the joyous atmosphere hummed with an unshakable spirit, as Sarah moved from table to table, brightening the hearts of those at the booth. Suddenly, the door slammed open, shattering the comfortable bubble of the diner. A masked figure burst in, his voice harsh and crackling. "Give me the money!" Panic erupted, patrons screaming, scrambling under tables as chairs toppled. Sarah froze for just a moment, fear clawed at her insides. Then, gathering her strength, she stepped forward, all-consuming compassion shining in her eyes. Instead of begging for her safety, she offered him an unexpected gift, a piece of pie. "A slice of our best pie," she said with unwavering kindness, her voice calm yet firm. Time seemed to stand still. Thomas, still confined in his world of privilege, felt the cold walls of his detachment begin to dissolve. He couldn't look away from Sarah, a symbol of courage in the chaos. As the robber hesitated, stunned by her audacity, Sarah bore witness to the pain that lingered behind the mask. She saw not just a threat, but a person struggling against the tides of despair, a reflection of too many stories across the country, where hunger and hopelessness battled for dominance. Thomas felt awareness wash over him like a tide. For the first time, he questioned his values and the decisions that had brought him here. Money and status faded against Sarah's ocean of compassion. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. With a collective breath, the diner's patrons felt a flicker of hope. Sarah's gesture, simple yet profound, had shifted the energy in the room. Thomas was no longer just a man behind a phone. He was a witness to a real heroism that transcended wealth. The robber, caught in the whirlwind of Sarah's kindness, faltered, his hardened demeanor cracking. For a brief moment, they shared the same humanity, a silent understanding of each other's pain. As the dust settled in the community, rallied by Sarah's bravery, surrounded her with love and support, Thomas found himself standing at a pivotal crossroads. Would he embrace this moment of reflection and make a change, or would he slip back into oblivion? Meanwhile, the ambience in the diner simmered with tension, leaving everyone to ponder the fate of the robber and the power of empathy that connected them all. How would these intertwined threads unfold in the chapters to come? The masked robber stood, frozen by Sarah's unexpected offer. His grip on the gun wavered, and the chaos morphed into a fragile silence. In that stillness, the diner held its breath, watching as the two figures faced each other. Sarah's heart raced, but she remained steady, her open palms steadying both her and the air between them. "Just like that," she said softly, "a moment of kindness can change everything. I know life can be hard, but I believe it can turn around." The robber's eyes, barely visible beneath the mask, flickered with uncertainty. Her words pierced the thick tension like a beam of light. For a fleeting moment, Thomas felt time extend. He was no longer an observer in a bubble of privilege, but rather part of a collective experience that bound them all. Amidst the trembling patrons, a tear slipped down the robber's cheek. Sarah's kindness had opened a door that could lead him to a different path. As he stood there, the weight of desperation hung heavily in the air, a stark reminder of the harsh life he had lived. Would he take a step back, Or would he collapse under the gravity of his choices? That brief moment hung in the diner like a fragile crystal chandelier, each breath laced with possibility. Then, shouts erupted again as a voice cut through the air. A nearby diner, Doug, an older gentleman whom everyone knew well. "Don't do this, son!" Doug called out, his voice trembling with both authority and compassion. "You can still choose differently. Whatever led you here doesn't have to define you." The robber turned, caught between the agonizing urge to flee and the flickering hope ignited within him. Thomas could hardly believe what he was witnessing. It was more than just a robbery unfolding. It was a battle for a man's soul, played out under the diner's bright lights. As the minutes dragged on, Sarah stepped closer, pie still in hand, her courage invigorating the room. "You're not alone," she repeated, her voice resonant and warm. "Let us talk about this. Just us." There was a spark of recognition in the robber's eyes, the humanity of her words reaching through the fabric of his despair. Thomas felt a surge of inspiration rise within him, the weight of his previous choices and the walls he had built around himself crashing down. Who was he to judge? How many chances had he dismissed, thinking wealth could shield him from the world? Slowly, the robber lowered his weapon. Gasps filled the room, but no one dared to move. The air shifted, thick with an unshakable tension, but also a flicker of hope. The diner patrons watched wide-eyed, hearts racing in unison. Sarah extended her hand, palm up, offering not just pie, but an invitation to live differently, to choose compassion over fear. "Please," she whispered. Time stood still as the robber's mask slipped, revealing a man burdened by choices, fear, and the longing to change. Would he take that leap? Would he leave behind a life of chaos for a chance at redemption? And then, just as he looked down at the floor, contemplating his future, the sirens of police cars echoed in the distance, rapidly approaching. Would their arrival close the door on this moment of transformation? In an unexpected twist, Sarah stepped back, determination etched upon her face. "I won't let fear win. Stand beside me," she urged the other diners, ready to confront whatever came next. As the tension surged, would they all come together, strangers now bonded by a single act of courage? In the face of impending uncertainty, what choices would they make? The moment hung in the air, pulsing with energy. What would happen when the police arrived? Would the robber become a symbol of hope, or would the diner's light flicker out into darkness? A low murmur rippled through the diner as sirens grew nearer, their wailing piercing the fragile silence. The tension turned electric. Some patrons clutched their mugs, while others instinctively reached for their phones, ready to capture the moment, as if it were some bizarre reality show. "Stay calm," Sarah urged, her voice ringing clear and strong. She kept her eyes locked on the robber, not allowing fear to seep into her gaze. "We've got this." He hesitated, the gun shaking slightly in his hand. For the first time, Thomas saw vulnerability beneath the mask. What had led this man to such a desperate act? The diner transformed into a mosaic of human emotion, fear, compassion, and the raw ache for connection that everyone felt but rarely acknowledged. Doug stepped closer, his age revealing him as an anchor amidst the storm. "This isn't to you," he said softly. "You're better than this. Remember who you are. You don't have to do this." The robber's breath came shallow as he looked back at Doug. Shadows danced across his face, illuminated by the flashing lights outside. Thomas's heart pounded. Would he be able to pull away from this brink? "Let us talk," Sarah said again, her voice steady as rock. She took another step forward, pie still in hand, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. It was a gesture of pure humanity, a peace offering in a moment of chaos. For an agonizing heartbeat, the masked man appeared to consider Sarah's acceptance. Could he really relinquish the grip of fear that wrapped around him like a vice? Could he approach kindness instead? Just then, the door swung open, and there stood two uniformed police officers, guns drawn, eyes scanning the diner. The moment exploded in a cacophony of voices. Patrons scattered in instinctive panic as law enforcement moved in. "Get down!" one officer shouted. The sound of metal clashing against tiles shattered Sarah's calm. "No!" Sarah shouted back, her voice cutting through the panic like a knife. Wait! Please! He's not here to hurt anyone. Time stilled again as the officers hesitated, glancing at each other, unsure of whether to proceed. The masked man began to tremble visibly, the gun lowering once more. Don't move! One officer barked, struggling against their training and the chaos unfolding. Trust me! Sarah called over the din as she took another step towards the robber, her hands still extended, Pi somehow managing to remain upright. We can end this peacefully. The robber's breath came heavier, caught in a tight spiral of emotions. Tears pooled in his eyes, now vulnerable. Thomas felt his heart racing not just for this moment, but for the weight of all moments, every crossroads he had ever faced. In that instant, the barrier of fear began to crack. The robber gazed at Sarah, almost searching. Was it compassion he recognized? Was it his own humanity? Look at her, Doug urged, his voice breaking through the tension. You're not alone, son. We see you. The sirens outside grew louder, a reminder that time was running out. Would he reach back into a life of desperation, or take this uncharted path laid naked before him? Just as the robber opened his mouth, ready to speak, the air shifted again. A collective breath was taken, a moment of expectancy. And then the unexpected happened. The robber turned his gaze to Thomas, who stood frozen in place, realizing that this moment would change everything for him too. What choice will you make? He seemed to ask, although no words escaped his lips. The weight of the question hung heavy in the atmosphere. What happens next? Would the bedroom of kindness prevail over years of regret? In an unopened chapter, dawn threatened to break. The air crackled with tension as the robber's gaze bore into Thomas, a silent exchange passing between them. A heartbeat surged in Thomas's chest. This was more than just a robbery. It was a test of humanity, an intersection of choices that could change everything. Please, Sarah's voice sliced through the silence again, her eyes not leaving the robber. You don't need this. We want to help you. The robber shook his head as if he were fighting against an invisible current pulling him back. You don't understand, he murmured, voice trembling. The sincerity cracking through his bravado confused Thomas. This was not the hardened criminal he had assumed. This was a man, lost and desperate. The officers exchanged glances, keeping their guns trained on him, but uncertainty flickered in their eyes. Outside, chaos pulsed, the sirens echoed, mixing with the frantic footsteps of responding officers. It felt like an encroaching storm, but within this diner, a fragile peace hovered, teetering on the edge. Look at us, Doug said again, his voice gentle but firm. What do you really want? We're not here to hurt you. This isn't the way. As if Doug's words had physically struck him, the robber's shoulders sagged. He took a shaky step back, trying to retreat from the weight of the moment. His grip on the gun loosened, yet a sense of desperation clung to him, palpable and raw. Tell me what you need, Sarah urged, her voice softening further. I'm just trying to survive, he finally admitted, his voice cracking, the gun now hanging limply at his side. They're gonna take everything from me, I don't know what else to do. For a moment, the world outside faded, the sirens, the shouts. It was just the four of them, locked together in this tender standoff. Doug took a step closer, the intensity of empathy radiating from him. We've all felt trapped, son. But there's a way out that doesn't involve more pain. Let us help you. Help, the word hung in the air, and the robber looked down at Sarah, pie still steadfast in her extended hand, a beacon of hope amidst chaos. The masked man's shoulders slumped, and tears brimmed in his eyes. I was supposed to be a father, but now I'm just a criminal. Maybe you can still be both, Thomas whispered, daring to step forward, heart pounding. It's not too late. The man's breath hitched, indecision wrestling within him. He looked down at the gun, cold steel against the warmth of a room full of strangers who cared more than he expected. It was a life-altering moment, and he was at its center. Behind them, patrons watched carefully, bated breath mixed with the scent of coffee and pie, comforting and surreal. The entire diner held its collective breath, waiting for the next move. With a quivering hand, the robber raised his gaze to Thomas, then Sarah, a heartbeat stretching into eternity. Would he pull back into the darkness of his choices, or step into the light of an unexpected future? The gravity of the moment felt monumental. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the back room, metal scraping against the floor. A figure stumbled out, and chaos erupted anew. Patrons gasped, the robber spun around once more, instinct kicking in. No! His focus shifted, the calm before the storm torn apart by new uncertainty. Tension crackled back as reality crashed back in the moment they'd been teetering on the brink of hope shattered, leaving everyone teetering on the edge once again. Where would this unexpected turn lead them, and would it be too late to save not just the robber but all those mingling hopes hanging in the air? A silent vow lingered within Thomas, promising himself they would find a way through the chaos together. And as fears swept back in, he couldn't help but wonder what piece of their humanity would remain when the dust settled. The figure that emerged from the back room was disheveled, eyes wide with panic. It was an older man, likely a truck driver who had stopped to grab a quick bite before hitting the road again. He had been oblivious to the unfolding drama, but as he stumbled into the diner, the air thickened with dread. A swirl of confusion painted his face when he caught sight of the masked robber, his heart pounding in reaction to the tension coiling through the atmosphere. "Hey! What's going on here?" The man's voice trembled as he dropped a bag of chips to the floor, the sound sharp and jarring, echoing like a gunshot in the stillness. The robber turned sharply, gun back up in his hand, forgetful of the weight that had almost fallen away. Panic sparked in his eyes as he took in the sudden change in the room's dynamics. In the blink of an eye, the fragile peace shattered. A wave of fear washed over the crowd watching from their booths, the sweet scent of maple syrup and butter suddenly oppressive. "Stay back!" the robber yelled, but doubt crept into his voice, splintering the confidence he had held moments before. Thomas felt adrenaline surge through him. The urgency threaded through his veins, urging him to act. "Wait," he stepped forward, his voice firm yet gentle. "He's just confused, let us all stay calm." But the robber was shaking now, his grip on the gun faltering. There was a flicker of humanity in his eyes, swallowed by the chaos erupting around him. Some patrons were ducking under tables, while others pressed against the walls, desperately trying to stay out of sight. Yet, amidst the panic, Sarah stood in the center, daringly calm. "Everyone, let us just take a deep breath," Sarah called out, her gaze steady on the robber. "You're not alone. We're right here." Her voice seemed to slice through the frightened murmurs, drawing reluctant eyes back onto her. It was a moment, tethered on the edge of madness, but there was a shift. The robber locked eyes with her, searching for something more than just a meal or robbery. Seeking understanding. "Look," Doug urged quietly, "you don't have to do this. Let us talk." For a heartbeat, it felt as if the weight of the world rested on this single moment. The atmosphere thickened with shared breaths, vulnerability woven into every inch of space. The back door was still ajar, the sound of sirens growing louder outside. It felt like time was winding down, inching toward an inevitable climax. But just as the robber's hand began to lower towards the floor, another crash disrupted the pregnant silence. A chair tipped over as a younger man, perhaps in his 20s, lunged forward. A wave of shock rippled through the diner. "What are you doing?" the robber shouted, the paranoia building back up. "Stop! Just let them go," the young man shouted, as if his naive courage could turn the tides. In that instant, everything spiraled again. The robber tensed, tiny beads of sweat rolling down his forehead. His face twisted, a cocktail of fear and rage. Thomas felt his own heart hammering in his chest, questioning whether this would end in violence or salvation. A moment of quiet terror hung in the air, broken by the sound of glass shattering near the entrance as the police pushed through the doors, weapons drawn, demanding everyone raise their hands. The room erupted into chaos, shouting and fear battering against the edges of their last grasp at control, and in the heart of it all, Thomas felt a powerful resolve solidify within him. If they were to survive this, they would have to stand together. Just as he opened his mouth to shout for calm, the robber caught his eye once more, trembling, lost, standing at the brink of desperation. Would he take a step back and choose transformation over violence? As decisions collided all around them, Thomas couldn't shake the gnawing feeling that the real battle was ahead, a struggle not just for their lives but for the very essence of who they all were. What direction would this turmoil take? Hope and chaos danced together, and the next heart-stopping moment awaited them just beyond the threshold of fear. The room erupted in shouts, a cacophony of voices blending into a tornado of terror. Thomas felt time stretch, seconds feeling like hours. Panic wrapped around him like a thick vine, squeezing tighter with each frantic heartbeat. He couldn't let this chaos win, he had to cut through it. With the police entering from the front, uniforms stark against the diner's homely decor, the atmosphere shifted again. The robbers' wide eyes darted around, desperately grasping for control as the shouts loomed. "Get back! Get away from me!" he screamed, the gun still in his shaky grip. Sarah stepped slightly forward, her voice steady, rising above the noise. "Please listen. We're not your enemies. You're afraid and that's okay." Her calm presence contrasted sharply against the turmoil swirling all around. In that moment, she became an anchor. The gunman's gaze flickered towards her, confusion tangled with fear. The way her eyes shone with empathy seemed to spark something in him. Panic wrestled with something deeper, a sense of exhaustion. The sirens grew nearer, echoing like a countdown. "Just let everyone go," Doug urged, his voice soft yet unwavering. "You don't have to do this. You're not alone." "Shut up!" the robber shouted, but the volume of his voice betrayed a growing instability. His shoulders tensed, yet his grip on the weapon trembled. Outside, the cacophony of sirens intensified as police surrounded the diner, but it was the quiet strength radiating from the small group inside that started to chip away at the robber's resolve. Then, in an unexpected motion, the younger man who had lunged earlier in a moment of misguided bravery took a step back. The robber's eyes darted from figure to figure, a flash of anger crossing his features, but it was eclipsed by a flicker of acknowledgement. "Please," Thomas took a breath. He could feel the air thick with desperation and the weight of expectation. "You're not a bad person, you just made some mistakes. We all do." A heavy moment hung in the air. It was a delicate balance between life and death, shame and hope. The robber's jaw clenched, wrestling with internal demons. He looked older suddenly, the weight of the world pressing down hard. "Get down! Everybody get down!" shouted a police officer, his voice sharp and commanding. As patrons dropped to the floor, Thomas felt a surge of urgency, a voice in his heart telling him they could change this moment. "Look," Sarah spoke softly again, her gentle tone cutting through the clamor. "Whatever you're going through, we want to help. You don't have to hurt anyone." The robber's expression faltered, a storm of emotion swirling inside him. Thomas caught a glimpse of something raw, of fear that transcended the gun in his hand. Perhaps, for once, vulnerability could bridge a chasm that seemed impossibly wide. Then, a loud crash echoed from the kitchen area as a waiter collided with a delivery cart. Silent gasps filled the space as the gunman twisted, suddenly demanding attention. Everything spiraled again, tension thickening like a high wire stretched taut. Thomas locked eyes with the robber once more, and in that single moment, all the world faded away, the fear, the chaos, the sirens, just two souls staring at one another. The weight of desperation hung heavily. Would they break through the wall of fear, or would the moment fracture into violence? Thomas held his breath, heart racing with both dread and a flickering hope that maybe, just maybe, understanding could rewrite their story. What was it that could turn this fearsome confrontation into an act of courage? In the depths of chaos, would they discover the humanity worth saving? Now stood the precipice of outcome, and everything hinged on the decisions that lingered in the air. What would come next, as the tide of turmoil ebbed and flowed? The robber shifted uneasily, his gaze darting between Sarah and Thomas, as if weighing their words against the world that threatened to close in on him. A flicker of doubt crossed his face, barely perceptible but profound enough to sense something was changing. Thomas felt the weighty silence around them settle, a collective breath held in anticipation. "Listen to me!" the robber suddenly shouted, but his voice cracked under the strain. "I didn't want to be here. I didn't want this. The gun wavered, shaking as though it was a projection of his own trembling resolve. Sarah took another soft step forward, as if drawn towards him by some invisible force. Her voice, rich with compassion, broke through the tension. Then let us help you. Whatever you're facing, you don't have to do this alone. Please. A moment passed, marked only by the trembling hush of the crowd, as if everyone was holding on to a fragile thread of hope. The sirens outside continued to wail, clamoring like sharp daggers in the air. But in that small sanctuary of the diner, time slowed, and each heartbeat felt monumental. Just stay back. The robber shouted again, but the desperation in his tone rang hollow. He looked less like a threat now and more like a scared child, lost and hopeless. Please, Thomas said again, his heart pounding like a drum in his chest. We can help you. Just put the gun down. You can talk to someone, you don't need to go through this alone. Silence blanketed the room, punctuated only by the quiet breaths of the onlookers and the shaky breaths of the gunman. A flicker of vulnerability crossed his features, and in that moment, Thomas saw the real man behind the mask, a scared soul who had made choices that led him here, just like anyone else could. Get back! Get away from me! The robber's voice rose again, but there was less firmness, more desperation shaking his words. In the background, Doug moved cautiously, inching closer to the exit. Maybe he was preparing to defend Sarah or make a sudden break for safety. Either way, it had the potential to make the situation explode. Each movement seemed to ripple across the room, heightening the intensity of the moment. Please, Sarah's calm voice wrapped around the group like a warm blanket. We can do this together. No one needs to get hurt. The robber's eyes flickered again, and for a brief moment, Thomas thought he might actually listen. He felt reality coalescing around them, urging them to take this fragile leap towards connection and humanity. But then, from outside came the sound of heavy footsteps, a clatter of boots, the hurried actions of police officers ready to storm in. No! The robber shouted, panic washing over him like a wave, and he swung the gun wildly. Stay back! His voice was thick with fear, and Thomas saw a man losing his grasp on everything that mattered. Time stretched once more as the whispers of fate and fear intertwined. Would they save him, or would despair take hold? Thomas's heart raced as he made a choice that could change everything. Just breathe, he whispered, hoping this simple command would reach through the storm brewing in front of them. We're here with you. Just take a moment. What would the robber do next? Would he embrace this unexpected lifeline or let go of everything, succumbing to chaos? As silence fell heavy again, the world seemed poised between hope and terror, a breath away from whatever would come next. Would someone's quiet strength prevail in this tempest of fear? The robber's breathing grew frantic as the footsteps outside escalated, mismatched sounds that echoed like thunder reverberating in the diner. Thomas felt the air weighed down by impending collapse, each breath near suffocating. He could see the man's eyes wavering, caught in a storm of choices. Listen, Sarah stepped even closer, her voice a calm island amidst the raging sea. Just give us a moment. No one here wants to hurt you. We can figure this out together. For a fleeting heartbeat, the robber looked genuinely conflicted. His grip on the gun softened, mouth twitching as though words were trapped behind a dam of anxiety. The crowd remained frozen, as though moving would shatter the fragile thread that connected them to this moment of despair. Thomas could feel his heart racing. He was terrified, yet something deep inside urged him on. You can do this, he whispered, a gentle encouragement meant only for the man in front of him. You're stronger than this. You've taken the first step by not pulling that trigger. Suddenly, Doug's shaky voice cut through the tension. We'll get through this. We can find a way. I promise. The robber flinched, eyes darting toward Doug in annoyance. Shut up. You're all just saying what you think I want to hear. But the anger lacked conviction. It was the despair of a person losing ground. Maybe we're saying what we all need to hear, Sarah replied softly, her steadfastness undeniable. Letting go doesn't mean weakness. It takes more strength to face your fears. A shadow flickered across the robber's face, a strange mix of fury and defeat. I'm not a coward. he hissed, yet the shaking of his gun betrayed him. The sirens blared louder, closer now, and the robber's breath hitched as he glanced over his shoulder, panic rising like a flood. Thomas sensed hope and fear spiraling in the air between them, an electrifying mixture that begged for resolution. Sarah's eyes locked onto his, conveying a sense of urgency laced with compassion. You need to make a choice. No one wants to hurt you, not even the officers outside. We all just want to help. The man's chest heaved, his brow glistening with sweat. But what if they don't want that? His voice cracked, desperation clinging tightly to his words. What if they come in guns blazing? We stop the cycle here, Thomas said, stepping forward, arms slightly raised, a plea etched in his features. We protect one another. You need to trust us, just for a moment. The terrifying uncertainty that surrounded them felt thick, almost tangible. It was as if time had frozen, everything culminating in this single moment of truth. The gun wobbled slightly in the robber's grasp, a manifestation of his internal battle. Would he drop the weapon, seek understanding, or yield to the chaos that loomed beyond the glass doors? Just then, a piercing voice shouted from outside, demanding the gunman's immediate surrender, a stark reminder of the world outside their fragile bubble. A moment stretched into eternity. Thomas's gut tightened. Just a little longer, he urged silently, wishing to break through the walls surrounding this desperate man. Then, all at once, the robber's facade began to crack. A teardrop slipped from his eye. I don't know what to do, he admitted, voice shaking. And in those words, in that confession, Thomas sensed a shift, the first chink in the armor of despair. Would this moment of honesty dissolve the fear, or would it spark further chaos? The air thickened again, swirling with unspoken questions and the hope of a transformation hanging like a breath between them. What choice would the robber make now, and how would it change everything? The silence clung to the air, stretching out like an elastic band about to snap. Thomas could hear the muffled cries of the police outside demanding the robber lower his weapon. Each sound was a reminder that time was running out. Yet for that brief moment, the world outside felt distant, as if they were cocooned within their own reality, disconnected from the chaos awaiting them. The robber's eyes glistened with unshed tears, and Sarah stepped even closer, her heart aching for him. It's okay to feel scared, she said gently. You're not alone in this. None of us want to see you hurt. His lips trembled, and for the first time, the gun lowered a fraction. But what if I don't want to be the bad guy? His voice cracked. The sincerity wrapped around everyone present, drawing them closer as if their hearts beat in unison. You don't have to be, Doug chimed in, stepping forward fearfully but resolutely. You can choose a different path. You can walk away from this. The robber's expression shifted. The weight of overwhelming emotion pressed down on him. It was the kind of vulnerability that made Thomas's chest ache with a deep empathy he had never felt before. Beneath the rough exterior and frantic energy, there was a person grappling with his very existence. Didn't he want it to end like this, the robber murmured, almost to himself. I just wanted to be heard. The crowd in the diner shifted slightly. An old man in a corner started to cry, a soft sob escaping his lips. It cut through the tension like a knife, raw, human, and unguarded. All eyes turned towards the man, who seemed to have opened a floodgate. I've felt that way many times, he said, his voice shaky but firm. As if no one could see me or understand. We all have our struggles. Thomas felt the palpable energy shift in the room, connection blossoming like wildflowers in a barren field. The robber's grip faltered even more, the weapon slipping slightly as his hands shook. I don't know what to do anymore. I thought. You thought this was the only way to be seen, Sarah interrupted softly, reaching out like a lifeline. But there's another way. We can help you find it. The sirens were still blaring outside, but the sounds seemed less important now. What loomed heavy in the air was the hope of transformation. Could they truly guide him from this dark place? But as if on cue, a voice punctured through the atmosphere, a stark reminder that danger still lingered. You have 30 seconds to drop the weapon. The loudspeaker barked an ultimatum, sending jolts of panic coursing through Thomas's body. The robber's eyes flicked towards the door, the conflict raging once more within him. Would this be the defining moment? Would he reclaim his humanity or succumb to fear? Please, Thomas pleaded, taking a deep breath. Just look at us. Your life matters. We're here, and we care. For a brief instant, the world stood still. The robber's tears began to flow freely now, crashing like waves against a rocky shore. I don't want to hurt anyone. But I feel so lost. Hope surged within Thomas, and yet, this shadow of desperation lingered. Would they reach him in time? Would that final choice tip the scales, guiding him towards either salvation or destruction? With every passing second, the weight of the moment pressed down harder. Where would this path lead? Could he finally break free, or would the sirens beyond their fragile shield mark the end of everything they had built in that diner? The answer lingered in the air, just out of reach, like the final note of a haunting melody. In that blood-pumping moment, where the line between hope and despair blurred, something shifted in the air. The masked robber blinked rapidly, trapped in a cyclone of emotions. He felt exposed, like a raw nerve surrounded by strangers who cared. And care they did. Doug's earlier words rang louder now, each syllable echoing in the depths of that raw fear. Please, Sarah said again, her voice unwavering, cutting through the panic that loomed heavier than ever. You don't have to do this. Just put the weapon down. We can talk. Just let us in. For the first time, the robber's grip on the gun loosened, just slightly. A spark of recognition flickered in his eyes. The sympathetic expressions of everyone around him, patrons on the floor, Doug in the corner, Sarah standing resolutely before him, seemed to shove aside the weight of his world for just a heartbeat. I don't want to hurt anyone, he choked out, tears streaming now. I just wanted to be heard. To matter. Thomas exchanged glances with Sarah, heart racing. They both felt it, the collective breath of a community stitched together by courage and vulnerability. Would today's chaos turn into tomorrow's hope? Would this struggling man find peace, or would the shadows swallow him whole? Your life matters, Thomas urged, his voice steady. You deserve to be heard. This isn't the end, it could be a new beginning. Holding every ounce of sincerity he possessed, he took a slight step closer, but Sarah's hand shot up in a gesture of affection and caution, grounding them both. Outside, the officers were still shouting. But within those diner walls, they were safe, cocooned in a shared humanity. And as they watched, the mask the robber wore began to slip away layer by layer, breaking through the facade of anger. I was supposed to be a father, he murmured, regret dripping from each word. I thought I had no choices left. The realization struck everyone like a lightning bolt. That's the thing. Doug jumped in, his empathy palpable. You have choices. We understand despair, and we could help. With every whisper of kindness, the walls around the robber began crumbling. The sirens outside rang less urgent now, almost a distant hum. The energy transformed, fear turned into compassion, binding everyone together in their collective involvements. Help me, he whispered, and in a swift, decisive moment he dropped the weapon to the floor. The sound echoed, a finality that filled the room with hope. A deafening silence replaced the chaos. The former robber stood trembling and vulnerable, freed from the weight of his choices, honor now more important than pride. And as hands reached toward him, Sarah's, Thomas's, Doug's, they formed a circle of warmth and acceptance. He was met with open arms, his journey towards redemption unfolding in that diner, where a piece of pie and a moment of kindness shifted everything. The officers, who had frozen outside amidst their commands, stepped in slowly, weapons now lowered. They assessed the scene, disbelief painted across their faces. No one was harmed. Instead, they witnessed a man reclaiming his life amidst a cacophony of love. As the sirens faded into the background, the patrons began to rise, slowly clapping until the sound became a steady crescendo. They had just witnessed a miracle, a transformation sparked by one woman's act of grace. Thank you, the robber said, tears falling freely down his cheeks. Each word was a gift, an apology, a confession, an acknowledgement of newfound courage. Start fresh, Sarah encouraged, compassion brimming in her voice. You can do this. And as they embraced their new beginning, Thomas felt a fierce sense of belonging, knowing the diner was not just a place, it was a family. Together, they emerged into a world where kindness spoke louder than fear. And now, this is the moment to show your support. You need to subscribe now, so you don't miss out on the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, it makes a difference. Comment below your reactions and feelings about this amazing ending. Don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. This was a journey worth taking together.